You know. Good evening, everyone. This is our November 1st workshop, the Village Board of Trustees. Can't believe we're in November, but we are. And there are a number of unusual and special things on the agenda tonight. So I would like to first ask to modify the agenda so that our guests can speak first. I would like to move up the discussion of the Eagle Scout project and the discussion of the dog park and the rec commission, and hold chapter 126 and 127 until after. Is everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. And then in terms of, there are some announcements, discussion I want to have about the last weekend, but we can address that after we hear from Simon, and before we go into 126 and 127, as they're related. So Simon, we shall turn our attention to you. If you might be willing to come up here so we can capture you on the camera, and our studio, our non-studio audience can see you. You can introduce yourself and let us know what you're thinking about.
Yeah, so my name is Simon Pieza. I'm a Boy Scout. I've been in the Scouts for about 9 years now, since I moved here in 2014, I believe. And I'm here to present my Eagle project, which is going to be two one-person picnic tables. So instead of a traditional large picnic table, it would just seat 2 people, and there'll be a chessboard on top of these picnic tables. There will be one on either side of the gazebo, but I'm open to moving them if you guys want to be in a different place.
We pause for a moment. Do we have the graphic?
One second.
Yeah, so right about there, looking over the river.
So where the arrows are.
Yeah. So the reason why I chose this project in particular and chess tables is because I lived in Brooklyn for the first 8 years of my life, and I was at the time I was really into chess. I went and took lessons, and in Brooklyn they have these notorious stone tables in parks with chess tables on them, and that just really inspired me, and I wanted to do something similar for Cold Spring. And I think chess in particular is a very nice and wonderful sport. It can be played by anybody of any language, any background, any education, and it's something that everyone can enjoy, and it's free to the public. You would bring your own chess pieces to the table to play them, of course, and yeah.
So you've been working with the rec commission, right?
Yes, yeah. I've been.
So tell us about that process.
Yeah. So I made my Eagle proposal and plans. I sent that over to the Recreation Commission, and they looked over it and they approved it. They thought it was a wonderful idea, and yeah, they also gave us recommendations on how to secure it to the ground. That was from the Highway Department. Their recommendation was to hammer rebar into the ground and drill it to the table so it can be movable, but also not stealable, and it won't float away in the case of flooding or anything like that. It'll also be made out of pressure treated wood, and it'll also have a gel staining on it as well to make it weatherproof or weather resistant. And over the years, it'll also be upkept by Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts to make sure it stays the way it's meant to be stayed.
That's great. That was one of my questions, is how you're going to maintain it over time. And I know I did talk with the roadways and facilities crew chief. He feels good about the locations. He doesn't have any concerns about tree roots. He feels that you've designed an installation method that is solid, and he is willing to assist future troops with future scouts with maintenance as needed. But he feels confident in the materials that you've chosen, both for the and for the color. Distinguish the board members have other questions for Simon?
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna be in the grass, is that right?
Yes, yes.
I do know that that sort of patch over on the south end of the park does tend to get kind of swampy.
Mhm.
It gets like mushy, so,
Oh, closer to the boat,
yeah,
the boat club.
it
Yes.
gets a little bit wet. So you guys might wanna just check it and see if there's a drier location. That particular little like corner of the park just gets really mushy and like wet.
Yeah, we could even, like this area over here in front of that would work too, kind of by the trees, that might be better. We just didn't want to put it like right in front because of traffic flow, we kind of thought it'd be better towards the ends, but yeah, but I think maybe. Kind of in front of where the electrical enclosure is there.
For members of the public, Jeff Amato is the chair of the Recreation Commission. Thank you for hopping in, and I think you're also an advisor to Simon
Yes.
Yeah.
on this project. Right on. That spot that you've just pointed out, Jeff, also it's a very high traffic area, and it tends to be, the ground tends to be compacted, and it's difficult for grass to grow there. So that might be a logical spot to where we're having difficulty growing, and it's just the opposite of the area just to the south.
That was my only concern was about mowing the lawn around it, and kind of through it, and so if it's an area where grass doesn't grow, that may be easier for maintenance.
Okay, yeah. So
I don't know if Betsy brought that up or. if you felt
He
like you could
didn't
mow around
speak
it.
to that specifically, but they do use weed whackers and hand trimmers too around the benches already.
Yeah.
So this is village property. And so ultimately it's the village board's determination to do this. I would like to not have you go through a formal process, but for the HDRB, but for the board to communicate with them and ask for any comments they may have. I can't imagine that they would have any hesitation. And then have you, we can, once we have their communication, render a decision. Talk to us about your timeline. I know you're on a schedule. You need to do this right before you turn 18, right?
Yes, well, I don't turn 18 for a while. My personal goal is to get this done before winter really sets in, to just make building it easier, so we're not building it in the cold with hard ground. Currently, I am waiting on the final signature from Mr. Gusick, from the Eagle Board. I was told that would take about a week. Once that's done, we're gonna start fundraising. My plan for fundraising was to do a door-to-door food drive. This is something that we've done in the Scouts every year, and something I've always enjoyed, but I actually haven't been able to do it personally for like a very long time. I've just always been away whenever it's been happening. So what this consists of is going door to door and asking for food donations, as well as asking if the person would like to make a donation to the Boy Scouts for this time towards an Eagle project. So once that's done, that should take about a day, an evening. My plan is just to get started right away, to get the materials and to build it and get it done. Hopefully before the end of November, that should be the case.
When does HDRB meet next?
Tuesday.
Oh, okay, so we can communicate this to them after this evening and ask them for a quick turnaround on recommendations. Go ahead.
What's the cost, cost of the project?
It used to be around $350, give or take, and I don't expect it to go any more than that. That's just about roughly the cost of the wood and all the things to put together in the stain. And
Seems like you have really done your homework.
yeah.
Very nice job.
Yeah, really good job.
And maybe just, I mean, this is a big deal, getting your, working toward Eagle Scout, maybe just a very quick little note on how you are required to bring a team of people together to work with you. You're not doing this on your own. One of the reasons Jeff is your advisor is that you need to have what in terms of community partnership.
Yeah, so we just have to have other people working on it. I'm more so a project supervisor than really just the project maker. So I'm gonna utilize other Boy Scouts, of course, to do a meeting, which is actually tomorrow. I'm gonna ask for volunteers to help with the project, and they will do probably a lot of the building work, and I'll do a lot of the supervising and managing of it, but also probably building some too. So
Right on.
yeah.
One other question, how does it get secured into the ground so it's not movable, or will it be movable?
So yeah, hammering the rebar into the ground and then drilling it to the table allows it to be movable by a lot of force, but not movable by anyone being able to just lift it up. It'll also keep it from floating away if it, if it floods or anything like that.
Which is highly likely.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it should be movable. It should be movable by means of the village and all that, but not from like a person to person. Like they would not be able to just lift that thing out of the ground and vandalize it.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I think the idea was, yeah, exactly what Simon said, so that we can prevent it from moving from flood, or if kids or somebody wanted to go and try and flip it. So the rebar would be maybe 6 or 8 feet long, driven into the ground, so it's pretty solid, and a little piece would be sticking up, but that piece would be hidden, it'd be inside of the wood and secured directly to the wood, so it wouldn't be sticking out at all, but it would just be a little piece sticking up, and then that would be screwed into the bench. And so if for whatever reason it had to be moved or relocated, we could unscrew it, remove it. We can even remove the rebar eventually, but it's not concreted, a concrete base or anything that's permanent. So that if for whatever reason we find out that we need to relocate it, we can do so.
I'm just confirming, the rec commission has already said thumbs up, right?
We've yes, we've agreed with it. We thought it was a good idea. One other item that was kind of, and this might be to HDRB, that I know a lot of the benches are painted brown. Bugsy had mentioned that. Originally, Simon was thinking of staining it. Obviously, we need to have a two-tone for the chessboard, so a light and a dark. So either in unfinished and finished type of stain. We looked at how to do it with a gel stain, as he mentioned, so that it doesn't bleed in, so you get nice sharp lines. But if it needs to be painted brown, if they feel that they want it to be painted brown, we're okay with that as well. We could just do the brown and then unfinished as the two colors of the chessboard.
So we will carry this to the HDRB, ask them to discuss it at their Tuesday meeting, and then I'll communicate with Jeff.
All right, yeah.
I'll get back to you.
Nice
Thank you so
job.
much.
This
Yeah,
is
thank
an
you.
exciting project.
Thank you. Well done with your presentation. Okay. Jeff. So on the focusing on rec for a second, I just want to pass out. I realized that my edits got shared with the deputy mayor and with the clerk and not with everybody else. So in terms of conversation around the chapter itself, I want to table that for today. Just so you have it, and then we'll check electronically as well. So you can pick that up after you have a chance to read through the draft. There are some areas that need some build out. I think I gave someone the one with copy with my notes on it. I did, I give it to you, Eliza. Oh, Traja. Okay. The definitions portion needs some build out, and there's some reordering that needs to happen in terms of numbering. And then obviously it needs to go on to the village attorney. So Sweeps is the lead on this one. If you want to share your any notes with her.
Okay.
So, and Jeff, also in that section, we're going to talk about dog park yet, but I put alternative language under village parks to accommodate dog park. Sorry, Eliza, what were you asking?
Are we communicating edits tonight or?
No, because nobody's had a chance to look at it.
Okay.
I didn't realize that this version hadn't gone to all of you.
So
I thought
you've
it sent
seen
it to
one
all.
version,
Yeah.
we made
I made
edits, she made edits, and now these are additional edits.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay.
And Jeff, here's a copy for you and for Lillian to
The rec commission. Thank you. Okay, so talk to us about dog park. Yeah, it's just like.
Okay, so, one of the ideas that we had, for the rec commission, is to try and, utilize the spaces best we can. And we realize that some of the spaces are already used, for certain things, even though maybe they're not, formally, basically formally made or set apart. So, for instance, Dockside is used as the dog park in the village, in which it's a nice area. It's a beautiful area. You know, we would like to do something there, but it didn't really seem all that feasible. So.
No, and state parks does not allow dogs on off leash
Right.
there.
And-
And they're wanting very much to get that under control.
Correct, yeah, and they didn't seem too thrilled about putting fencing up, putting an enclosure up in that area. So we looked at the other areas in the village, and one of the areas that we looked at was shown on the screen there, which is the northwest corner of Mayor's Park. And so it's outside of the ball field. You can see the baseball diamond on the right side. And so this is past the pavilion. It's one of the more underutilized areas of the village park. The fence, the area shown in red is existing fencing. So that's what's already there, part of the ball field and also part of the fence that separates Metro North train tracks. And so the yellow fencing would be new, and that's what we're proposing to provide there. Now, this area is unfortunately one of the wetter areas of the park, and so times of heavy rain does get wet. So we realize that. But that being said, there's really not any other options down at Mayor's Park and the areas that we looked at in McConnell Park. Outside of the Potts Park, we thought that having a dog park right near a kids park is not ideal, and there's and some of that area is nice and nice to kind of remain open as opposed to put fencing up there. So this area is kind of set back. We were thinking of maintaining the existing, I think it's 42-inch fencing, the same height fencing that they had there, and we did get quotes. They're ranging from 73 or 7,500 to 9,300, depending on whether we go with a galvanized or a steel coated plastic or rubber coated black. So it would have a gate going towards the pavilion, and there's already a double gate in the red portion of the fence between the ball field and the proposed area for the dog park.
So if someone came into the pavilion side of the park, can they enter the dog park from there, or do they need to
Yes.
enter on the?
Yes, correct, yes, so they'd be able to, so the yellow fence would have on the east side would have a proposed gate there as well, so
So
but two
gates.
gates, the gate really in the red is meant more for access for mowing, to get a mower in. It's a double gate, and so you'd still be able to get in there to mow as needed. And but yeah, if there was for instance, if there was a sporting event going on at the ball field, you'd be able to still utilize the dog park outside. You know, if we decide that that's allowed while events are going on, you should be able to utilize that and access it without interrupting the sporting event.
I did talk with Bugsy about this. I know you have too.
Mhm.
It is in an area that's inundated. It's not really buildable for anything else because the ground is spongy there and inundation prone. It's kind of the highest and best use for that corner that's underutilized already. And this is something that villagers have been asking for years. The town does have a dog park, but you have to drive to it. So people have wanted a place where they could walk the dog and take them off leash. And this solves some of the pedestrian dog conflict that we've had at Dockside, where people and dogs off leash mix without any restraint on the dog. So here the dogs can actually be free, and I love this idea. I don't know others. Questions for
It's
Jeff?
a win. This is a total win. I mean, we need this really badly, I think. I am a dog owner, but so it would be nice to have something more local, and my dogs don't go off leash unless they're in a confined space. And so I think, you know, for everyone who does that anyway, even though they're not supposed to, have a proper spot makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah, and it's a nice area. I mean, it might argue it's not as nice as Dockside, but it is a,
I mean, it's
still.
that view.
still the
Yeah.
view, still the-
Could you have a more beautiful
I
spot?
think it's a great idea and a really fabulous way to bring more use to Mayor's Park, which, you know, if there's not sporting events, it's kind of empty. So I think it's a fabulous idea. I'm so glad you guys are bringing it forth. Thank you.
The one thing that Bugsy wanted clarification on was people cleaning up after their dogs. Right now, you're required to clean up after your dog and carry it out. I think that should continue to be the same, although it might be great if we had a bag dispenser or something that we could stock.
And a
So
garbage.
So that's
Well, the
actually,
garbage, that Bugsy's asking that it be taken out for a
Oh.
couple of reasons.
Okay.
Either he's got to go deep into the park to pull it out, or we need to pay Royal an additional amount to go in. So encouraging people to carry out the waste.
but yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And our idea was to work with the scouts again on a,
Another Eagle Scout project, right on.
yeah, well, my neighbor, I've already talked to her about it, to Tara O'Sullivan, about potentially having a dispenser, a bag dispenser
Oh, that's a
there.
good silver award project for somebody. Yeah, okay.
So, and this whole project, we're hoping to fundraise for it. So it would be no cost to the village. That's the plan. We'll see how it goes, but we're gonna use the 501c3 Friends of Phillipstown, which I'm a part of, and now the village is working with them hand in hand to raise money.
And Supervisor Bintassel is here tonight.
Thank you.
His attorney, our attorney, have looked at it and we have no reason not to proceed in this way. Thank you very much. We just need to make sure that when gifts are given there, people identify them as intended for.
Yeah.
And then obviously you're on the board, so the allocation will be
We have,
monitored by you.
we have an enormous list of rules for our dog park. They might be handy.
Oh, yes, we would appreciate.
Signage
We are now-
would be important.
Yes.
We're in the process of updating the code. It'd be good to have a look at that while we're doing it. I gave 2 alternatives for dogs for the park and without the park, but building it out would be helpful.
Yeah, having that language would be helpful.
Yeah, and we were also thinking similar to the other dog permits, but having registered their dogs to make sure that they're vaccinated.
Oh, that was the
and
next
that
question. So continue, you would still, rec would still recommend a permit for the
Permit
dog.
for use, yeah. We can talk about, you know, if doesn't necessarily need to be a cost associated with the permit, but just to verify that the dog has it's up to date on its shots and they understand the rules and regulations.
Good idea.
We do that now with the permits we give out for that, they have to have their paperwork
Exactly, so it'd be the same.
for the vaccinations.
Yeah,
It's a question and a comment. How big, what are the dimensions?
yeah,
of it?
so it's about 125 feet by 125 feet. That's kind of the area. So
That's
it's
pretty good.
yeah, it's fairly large.
Yeah.
I mean, enough that, you know, larger dogs can run. The northeast corner of it does have a tree right near there that's actually being trimmed by
The willow tree.
yeah, the top of it is dead, but I spoke with Jen about it and she said that can be trimmed. And hopefully in this winter, but so it does have some shade too, so it's not all just in the sun. But
Would also be a place for you guys to work with the tree advisory board. Because those willows, I mean, they are very weak trees and they're on their way out. So to think about a planting plan
Mhm.
going forward with donated trees.
Okay, yeah.
For shade, you know, trees, start them growing now while the willows are still there, and knowing that they're on their way out.
Right.
4 feet, I understand the logic of it. Have you heard from any dog owners concerned that it's too low and dogs will get over it?
Well, I mean, we could potentially look at a higher fence. The problem is that the red portion there is the existing fence. And so we wouldn't be able, then we'd
Yeah.
have to either.
I
put-
understand the logic of it, just.
Yeah, I mean,
Anyway, and maybe ask.
yeah, we
a
might be
couple
able
dog
to check.
owners or people in the audience.
Yours is
and-
4 also?
It's 4, okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay, I just don't, I wanna make sure that it's.
yeah, I mean,
well
I,
liked.
One Jack Russell over the fence.
Yeah, I know, I mean, that's you.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah, Okay, great. It's a great idea.
So, I mean, it'd be good to take a vote, I think, to approve this and give the rec commission direction to go, go, go. So would someone like to make a resolution?
I'll make a motion to approve
Motion, sorry.
the proposal for a dog park in Mayor's Park.
Second.
Are we putting into the motion the goal of fundraising outside of?
Like,
Is
would
that,
you like to
that's
make that
part of the
modification?
proposal?
Yes,
So
yes.
we're accepting the whole proposal, right?
Accepting the proposal as funded through the, yes, okay.
So you accept the modification on your motion?
I do.
Okay, second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, any opposed? It's the best day.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody on the commission.
Yeah.
It does not get better than that. Okay. So, before we transition into the incredibly exciting discussion on vehicles and traffic, I want to go through a few things from the weekend. We need to switch glasses. It's been a lot of conversation around the village about how intense visitation was on Saturday. Night, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Jeff.
And there are some really important factors that I think the public should know about. There's always a Saturday in the fall that is like the perfect storm with events. There was a football game, there was a junior
Halloween
class
parade.
fundraiser at school, Halloween parade, it was a boat day. And it was the first nice day in 7 weeks, the nice Saturday in 7 weeks. So the data is available right now for Saturday only, so just one day. Metro North sold 3,008 tickets to Cold Spring on that day. But the very interesting element is the percentage of people who bought the tickets that day versus people who bought earlier and activated. And it was 250% higher for activation. So people bought tickets in earlier weeks. The weather was crappy. They didn't use them right away. They used them on Saturday. 3,000 people used them on Saturday. So it felt like a tide of people because it was a tide of people. And so this has been, I communicated with the government and community relations officer at Metro North and with our representatives on the data committee for the Fjord Trail to say, you know, these are the kind of worst case scenarios that we're needing to plan for. Because it does happen every year, whether the number is 3,000 or not. This is the first time we know the number because it's the first time we've asked. But we need to be planning for that eventuality going forward. There was also questions about traffic and parking control. And I just want to make clear that the village does not patrol 9D outside of the village. I mean, we all know this, but for the public, that's the Sheriff's Department and the Parks Department. There was a question of why was there not more towing in the village this weekend? Because the tow companies were completely and fully engaged on 9D. So there just weren't enough tow trucks to go around. They were coming from across the county, et cetera. In the village, there was a particular issue with a car parked in a driving lane and concern that that car was not towed, even though it was ticketed, but it was not towed. Previously, the police department has not towed cars unless they were perceived to be impeding emergency vehicles or blocking a driveway. Our local code is more expansive than that. Did I bring that in? I don't think I brought it in. Give me a second. Maybe I did. The local code says, removal of vehicles parked in prohibited areas. Any authorized law enforcement official shall have the authority to remove and store any vehicle parked in prohibited or unauthorized areas or illegally parked during snowstorms, floods, fires, or public emergencies, or found unattended in areas where such vehicle constitutes an obstruction to traffic or where such parking is prohibited. So this is directly from the state's enabling legislation. It's broad and it gives a lot of capacity to our officers. So I have asked the officer in charge to make sure that the officers have updated training on what the local code is and what their capacities are, so that we do have the ability to pull cars like that. There were situations too with people parked right up to stop signs. It was dangerous. So that is being addressed. The last thing that I want to make sure we talk about is there is a bit of mythology roaming around the village that the C Streak passed its cap of 400 people. It did not on any of the days. It was at its cap at 400 on Saturday. The balance of the number, one of the crew members reported 586. That's the people who got off at Bear Mountain and the people who got off at Cold Spring together. So I do have the numbers for each of the days in Cold Spring, where the numbers that got dropped off in Cold Spring and the numbers that got dropped off at Bear Mountain, and that matches up with what was reported out. That was another item that I want to make sure that we're calculating with the data committee. They've got correct numbers to work from. Any more on that before we head into traffic? Okay. Right here. Okay, so Eliza has taken all of the public comments from our hearing on vehicles and traffic and resident parking and incorporated them into the next draft. I went through and double checked. I know others have read too. Are there edits that any of you want to recommend to Eliza before I hit mine?
No.
Okay, you ready? Buckle up. It looks like a lot of white, a lot of yellow, but okay. So what's the easiest? Shall I call out the section? Shall I just go through it and then hand it to you after?
That would really help.
Okay, so under definitions, I would write out application other than that. And in the municipal lot, I think it is helpful under that definition to name the lots. They may not be our last lots, although I don't know where else we would build one, but I would say including but not limited to the lots at the Boulevard, Fair Street, Mayor's Parking, New Street. Good night. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if our pagination is going to be the same. I'm looking at the red line version. So this is on 12610, page 12610, section 126-18-2, CA. You had in the definition of the crosswalk identified a larger section of buildings that the crosswalk is in front of. A member of the public asked for that to be narrowed down. This is the one I'm talking about, the crosswalk in front of Village Hall, between 85 and 87 Main Street. Were you intending to try to capture the pedestrian zone around the crosswalk as well with the larger numbers? Like, did she undo what you were intending, or is this acceptable to you?
I think there was confusion. What she was asking about was that I think I had written that it was no parking from the crosswalk zone that is west of the crosswalk plus the police parking area.
Okay.
And
Oh, so
she
it's
was
this one in
correcting me
particular.
and saying that's not actually no parking where the police parking area is, that's restricted parking. So she had me remove that and keep it, it was already in the police restricted parking area.
This is particularly the crosswalk though.
It's the crosswalk zone is what it's talking about.
Okay, so you're comfortable with that modification?
Yeah.
Okay. When we start losing people left and right.
Pretty dry.
Okay. Mayor's Park and definition. Remember what my own notes are under that section D. This is identify. Oh no, this is actually the ADA. That's the conversation we had about where the actual ADA space is.
Oh, okay.
This is a
That's a
definition of
different
parking
one.
spaces. So 126-18 to C 2 A through G, A through I identifies where ADA spaces are. So let's just cross-check that 85 to 87, you had it a little bit further east, which it actually is. It's not in front of this building at all.
Mhm.
So let's make sure that that's what you want it to reflect. It's actually in front of your number, which is what,
91.
Where it's supposed to be.
87 and 91. That's the way you had it, and then it got changed back with her correction.
Okay.
Okay, now my head's back in it.
Okay.
Item D. One space in the municipal parking lot at the corner of Kemble Avenue and the Boulevard. That's fine. H, 2 spaces in the Fair Street municipal parking lot. We have distinguished out Mayor's Park in definitions, or you will distinguish it out under definitions, Mayor's and
Mhm.
Fair Street. I don't think if we've defined it as a separate lot under definitions, that this is unclear anymore.
Right. Yeah, no, that was clarified.
Okay, and then there are 2 item Is. It's just an enumeration.
I think it's a J.
Oh, is it a J for the underline? Okay, we'll just confirm. Thank you, Laura. Okay, 126-18-4, this is the section on tour buses. There was a question asking whether this means buses can go in one way or 2 ways on the loop. I think that our intention was that whatever way they went. So if I clarify, maybe in either direction on the loop, I don't know if that helps. Doesn't matter.
No. It's
Well-
a two-way street.
I understood, but I think her point was it's unclear in the text. Does anyone else find it unclear?
But it's not a two-way street on.
It isn't, it isn't a 2-way street on Sundays.
Right, so they couldn't go any other direction anyway.
So signs are gonna direct them. So
Yeah.
do we need clarifying language there?
I don't think so.
Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, I guess as long as the signage is really clear.
I mean, the signage is really clear.
Yeah.
It's blocked and there's a big one-way only
Yeah.
in that section on during those particular times. Article 5, enforcement and penalties, just a typographical. Removal of vehicles parked in prohibited area, semicolon, abandoned vehicles, because you're too. Right now, it looks like or abandoned vehicles, and you mean and, I think.
Mhm. Okay.
Page 126-14, this is the table with parking tickets, the amounts for parking tickets defined. I find it so hard to read because every single box has an amended notation in it. My recommendation last time was to put an amendment notation at the top of the table, entire table amended X date.
Okay.
I just think it'd be easy to read.
Yeah, that's the music.
Page 126, 121, it's section 2628 regarding one-way traffic, just to clarify, the previous iteration of this code had railroad going one way west toward the river. In consultation with that neighborhood and discussion among the board, we determined that it makes more sense to have it run east so that if someone gets on Depot Square, they have a route out. So that is the change from east to west on that one. I just wanted to clarify it for the record. In the table 126-31, just correcting the spelling of amended. Spelling of Paulding in 126-32. Like I'm that person right now. Sorry.
Turning into
Somebody's gotta be that person. 126-34, schedule 7. No comments from the PDOT gallery. Schedule 7 speed regulations. We need to pull out Wall Street, the Chestnut Street on from Wall Street to Dunkin' Donuts. we need a state permit to do that.
Okay,
So that item comes out.
okay,
And we should apply for the permit. There are two locations that are problematic that we need permits on state roads for no parking. And one is that intersection and the other is at the end of Orchard. Now that the Methodist Church is super busy on Sundays, people are having a hard time getting out of Orchard Street onto Main.
so, would we apply for the permits and then have to
It
change
doesn't
in the
need to
code, or
be
we don't have
codified in
to?
our code because it's not our road to regulate.
Got it.
But we do
okay.
need, if we
We need
would like to
apply.
have no parking there, we need to ask the state to make that change.
Got it.
This is a word order that I don't understand rather than reading it out. I've got it marked here.
Okay.
A couple of spots with, just, I don't, the wording, it looks like something got deleted, an extra thing got deleted when the wording was corrected.
Okay.
Marion Avenue. This was not code modification that we made. This is from the previous board, but it had not been implemented yet. The way the direction was laid out in the table, the east side parking referenced a point on the east side of the street. So it, in implementation, was very confusing for the team and it didn't make sense logically in the field. So the signs have been modified, but we need to make sure that the language matches what's happening in the field. And I think you said 30 feet on the
No, we
East
said
side.
across from number 3.
rather than feet.
Yeah.
So we need to find the language is ineloquent and I don't know how to, from the location across the avenue from the southeast corner of the property of 5 Marion, there's gotta be a way to
I'll talk
Yeah.
to my editor about it.
talk to the editor, right on. Okay. Related to winter parking, seasonal parking restrictions, I think we can take out the specific reference to Fair Street and New Street now that we have defined the municipal lots. I think it was you, Lillian, last week who asked about the American Legion. I did contact the American Legion to ask them, we've lost winter parking at Mayor's parking lot, if they'd be willing to allow villagers to use that lot again. They are. They would like to have and we would like, I think, to have an actual agreement on this, and to make sure that we're indemnifying the American Legion. So that doesn't go in the code because that's a temporary situation, but
Yeah, we should reach out to Hudson House too and see if we can make a similar agreement.
Oh, that's a good idea. Do you wanna do that?
Yeah, I can do that.
we're getting closer. I don't remember what my note was here. Give me a second. 12641, parking in municipal lots. Oh, just all of them need to be listed there. All about, right? There was a question about the definition of the resident parking area on Church Street. I think that the modifications, there was note that these were smaller areas or different areas than what the the parking committee had recommended. And I think it's because of the fire company expansion. That one's good. The fire company turning
One
radius.
spot, that's right, to give the fire company easier access or, yeah, access to getting out.
So I guess just making sure that those captures on Church Street and Furnace Street, 4 to 6 Furnace Street, that we've got the right numbers there. I'm sure you do, but just double checking. Okay, that's it for 126. Like nobody else spent the last how many days reading the Fine Tooth Comb?
Oh,
No, I think there
Your
were
eyes twitching a little bit. Okay, 126. I gotta remember what it is. Hang on. Match against terms. I don't remember what this comment is.
your comments or one of
My
the
comment.
comments. Like capitalizing definitions.
No, you know what? I think I old version that was matching against terms in the zoning code, which you already did. So I'll just hand you this one.
Thank you. Well, we're 31 times.
Like on top of your head.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion on 126 or 127? Go ahead.
No, I guess I'm curious what our sense of
Next steps and.
So I'll make these amendments the next day or two and try and get it all to the trustees and to Jeff, who provided it looks solid. We'll post it and then we can bring it to the board for.
I would like very much to have a resolution on the agenda next week
Yeah.
to be done. Great. Does everybody feel comfortable with that?
Yeah.
We're in a good
Okay.
spot.
Thank you, clerk. Awesome.
They're done already.
You're done.
Thank you, Jeff.
Approval of bills. You've got those.
I do. Motion to approve batch number 7104 in the amount of $108,767.81.
Second,
second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Question.
Mhm.
How many are before Thanksgiving?
Oh, goodness, no.
Yeah.
Thank you for the reminder.
We should probably also look at calendars and just set for the holiday coming up.
Jeff and I had this discussion the other day. You were gonna, I think, put together what you thought would work best for office staff, in terms of Friday before, after, etc.
Before,
Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year.
or close Friday after Thanksgiving. New Year. We're
I don't
closed
know what day
Christmas,
of the year, the week's too.
we're closed Christmas Day and the day after Christmas, and it's business as usual. And if we're gonna be, I would love to close the office, but if we're gonna be doing residential parking permits, it's not feasible to close the office. And I, quite frankly, we need to be at full staff, if not more than that week, so.
And that timetable is gonna be dependent on all of the other factors between here and there, so we won't know that.
Well, we know to get stickers and sell
That's true.
them. Yeah, we'll be ready for that.
We don't have to wait until that week to sell them, they just go.
No, but it's-
But
Yeah.
people
We
will
need to
be
make sure
coming. Yeah.
our record keeping is
Mhm.
ready.
Yeah.
All right, we have reached the public comment portion of the agenda. The village board welcomes input from the community. When you speak, please state your name and address for the record. If you choose to decline, simply say decline, please. Comments 3 minutes or less. Who is running a timer this evening? And I'd ask you to remember that we're all neighbors. We do traditionally recognize residents of the village first, residents of Phillipstown and Nelsonville next, and then any others. So if there are village residents who'd like to speak, we'll recognize you first. Anyone online? Hi. Pete.
How are you?
All right, how are you?
Good. Peter Farrell, 191 Main Street. I sent a letter to the board, and I was hoping that you guys would read it into the record. I was told you would not. So I'm gonna read the letter to the board,
You're welcome to.
and
And I
you're
will-
open to respond. If you choose to respond, that's, it's on you guys. So basically, we put together a letter with me and my neighbors, from the upper section of Main Street that were impacted by the flood on July 9th. So here's the letter. The below Cold Spring residents would like to ask each Village of Cold Spring trustee if they are aware of any storm mitigation efforts taking place on Cedar Street on July 9th during the massive rainstorm that may have contributed to the Cedar Street flood crashing down on Upper Main Street and dangerously flooding over 7 homes on the south side of Main Street, east of the 90 traffic light. So is anybody aware of any
And Peter,
water
the answer-
mitigation efforts taking place on that day
The answer that I
during
gave
the
to you,
storm?
the answer that I gave to you.
That's the question. Is
Peter,
anybody aware of
I'm
that?
going to answer your question. you have been provided. Your question is based on a premise that is incorrect. There was
No,
no,
it's-
Peter, I'm answering your question, please.
You're not.
If you would let me talk, I can answer your question.
Were
There was,
were there-
Peter, I'm trying to answer your question. I have the floor now.
Go ahead.
There was no pumping done during the storm. Pumping was not done until July 14th. So your premise in that question is not correct.
Well,
And that is why,
just-
Peter, I'm still talking. I
Sure,
have
go right
the
ahead.
floor.
Go right ahead. There's no pumping in my
I
question.
have the floor. You asked if there were interventions, if there
No,
was
no
mitigation.
pumping is in the question. It's just water
There were no
mitigation.
mitigations during the storm because the storm water, Peter,
Mhm.
was so dangerous that no one could stand in it. So there were no interventions during the storm. The storm was the storm. It was 9 inches of rain in a
Yeah.
3.5 hour period. The interventions came after the storm, and the pumping that you seem to be concerned about did not begin until July 14th.
Yeah, the pumping is not in my correspondence here.
So
There's
there
no
is your
pumping in
answer.
it. It's a mitigation
There's your
question.
answer. I would be very
But
happy.
water from Cedar Street landed in my property.
Water from the entire mountain landed in your property.
Yeah, no, but Cedar
And
Street
everyone
specifically,
else's.
because we found stuff in that water that was
Peter, we
from that area.
live in a
So,
downslope
Some of the
community.
people in our community are concerned that nobody is being transparent with the water that came down one side of the street.
So I have offered to either in public session or if someone would like to meet your homes, I have offered, the supervisor has offered, the Bureau of Emergency Services has offered to sit with you, review the maps so that you understand how the stormwater moved, what we did in the days after, what our plan is going forward.
So the water on Cedar Street left on its own. There was no, on that day, July 9th, the water came down from Cedar Street, It's documented on several videos. So it came down on its own.
Yes, Peter, there was no pumping.
It just
on
came down the
day of
street.
storm. Correct, and
Okay,
after the
no, I
rain
accept
stopped,
that. That's your answer. I accept
Peter,
that.
after the rain stopped, the water was still running down the mountain. So your assertion that additional water was coming from a pump is simply not
I
correct.
didn't assert that. Sorry, that's what's coming out of your mouth.
That's actually what has come out of your mouth for the last 2 months.
No, I haven't spoke to this for 2 months. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, I've been
Okay,
rebuilding the house that was
Are we
damaged.
done with the question?
No, but I just want to be clear that that's your answer, that there was no mitigation happening during the storm on July 9th.
Peter,
That-
there
that you're
was
saying
no mitigation of the waters during the storm because the water
you. That's-
conditions were dangerous.
So you gave me the answer I was looking for. There was no mitigation happening on July 9th.
Thank you. Any other
Thank
members, any other residents of the village that would like to speak? Okay. Anyone from Phillipstown or Nelsonville? Anyone else from the public who'd like to speak? I'm sorry, I'm recognizing this gentleman.
Yeah.
Name and address for the record or simply decline?
Let's go to Scalzo and, Zach Clark.
We have 3 minutes. Can we please give a timer, please?
Scalzo, SCALVO, and my website is scalzophoto.com for my contact information. Just let me know when we're firing up. So Officer Burke has 0 lawsuits. Excellent. Officer Kenneth Baker has multiple lawsuits over $300,000. You have to how abusive you have to be to get up to $300,000 in lawsuits. Well, many of them are very graphic and disturbing. Officer Burke has, what, 6 complaints during NYPD? Not that much. Baker has 43 complaints. Now, sure, you might say, we don't know if they're true or not, but where there's smoke, there's fire. So I think it's important to look into these things. And we've been trying to bring this up to you for a while, and communication hasn't been effective. But so we originally became aware of this when the gentleman got a false ticket, which I spoke to 2 attorneys and he said Baker gave him a false ticket. It was I'll give you the moral argument and then the legal argument.
A minute.
All right, wait. So I spoke to 2 attorneys and they said, well, first of all, the moral argument, giving someone a 5-point cell phone ticket for safely pulling to the side, that's not what the purpose of that ticket is. It's designed for a moving vehicle to prevent people from getting into a car accident and killing a family or driving into a telephone pole. That's what the 5-point ticket is for. So Officer Baker abused that law to give a false ticket to the gentleman over there.
And the legal argument is that Baker either doesn't know the law or lied, because in a non-commercial vehicle, the vehicle has to be moving. And both the prosecutor and Baker said that they're trying to use, I highlighted it. The highlighted part is for only commercial vehicles, and just this first sentence is for non-commercial, and they were trying to apply this. So I'm gonna speak to the prosecutor as well and figure out, and actually, this lawyer here, Stacy Panetti, she was wondering if, she said, either the prosecutor doesn't know the law or he lied, or Baker doesn't know the law or he lied. And I guess that's it. So thank you for listening. On 35, I might as well use it. Yeah, so I guess we'll, and I appreciate you listening this time. And actually, when you did the intro, you're a little more welcoming to out of towners. When you did the video with gentleman over there, it was very tense. So this is, in my opinion, an improvement. Maybe you. This is just my opinion. Although, well, how can I end this?
12 seconds.
Yeah, so that's about it. And yeah, I think most police officers have close to 0 lawsuits, and to have 8 with close to $300,000 is a problem. And if you have past
Thank you very
lawsuits,
much.
if you have past lawsuits,
To the record, anyone else from the public wishing to speak? Your name and address for the record, or simply say decline. And we start the timer. Go ahead. Are you speaking?
Yeah, I am. Good evening. My name is Sean Paul Reyes. I'm an independent journalist and owner of Long Island Audit, Inc. I want to be clear, I am not a resident of the village of Cold Spring. I do, however, pay New York state and federal taxes, which I'm sure the village has no problem receiving. I am here today to peacefully exercise my First Amendment right to petition my grievances to my government. Firstly, Mayor Kathleen Foley, shame on you. You were elected to serve the people of Cold Spring. Mayor Foley, you hired Kenneth Baker as a patrolman for the village of Cold Spring, knowing he was a disgraced former NYPD officer with 8 lawsuits against him, costing taxpayers over $300,000. Do you honestly believe that decision was in the best interest of the constituents? I think not. Truthfully, it sounds like you owed someone a favor. Secondly, when confronted publicly with this information by Leroy Truth Investigations, you doubled down. You treated Leroy with such disdain and had him thrown out of the building. Lastly, if all that wasn't bad enough, you are now censoring public comments on the village's social media, which I will remind you is illegal, Mayor, and will lead to the village being sued in federal court for First Amendment violations. I guess you don't care. You've already demonstrated you will employ a disgraced public servant with over 8 lawsuits against him for constitutional rights violations. Mayor Foley, ignoring the public's legitimate concerns regarding your hiring practices and Officer Baker's pattern of tyranny and corruption isn't going to solve anything. In fact, it will only hurt the village as this story becomes more prominent. I am sure tourists will boycott the village, costing you dearly in revenue. You need to step up and do your job. We, the people, demand that you fire Officer Kenneth Baker. He has no business serving the public in any capacity, let alone as a law enforcement officer. Fire him before he bankrupts the village of Cold Spring with another lawsuit. Choose your next steps carefully, Mayor. We, the people, are watching. Thank you.
Your comments have been entered into the record. I would like to provide corrections into the public record. I was not in office in 2019. I didn't hire Kenny Baker. You'd have to speak to the previous mayor and board about that. So facts are important.
Yeah, and you're allowed.
Excuse me, I'm talking right now. Your time is done. I'm talking right now. I'm talking.
Okay, you don't have to talk to me like a Mataba.
You are interrupting me.
Okay, go ahead.
So you are incorrect about who hired any officer, and the village does not address personnel matters in the public record. So thank you very much. Would anyone else from the public like to speak?
Yes,
3 minutes, starting now.
no, wait till I'm in front. Don't take my time, like you did last time.
So,
Right.
name for the record, or do you decline?
no, no names, no name. And I reclaim my 10 seconds that I've lost. Mayor Foley and Village Board, you have so much information with which, if you were doing your job and protecting the security of this village, you would instantly fire Kenneth Baker. Don't take my word for it. Here's a village resident who contacted me a few days ago. Dear Leroy, thank you for exposing him, Cold Spring, New York police officer Kenneth Baker. This man has very intense power trips and serious anger issues on a scale so astronomical it could only have derived
from a pathetic personal life. I have two personal experiences with him where somehow he managed to set the world record for the most police procedures and regulations humanly possible broken within 0.001 seconds. Both incidents occurred when I was driving around with friends in the village eating fast food or gas station snacks we purchased. The interaction consisted of Officer Baker jumping straight into claiming I am shoving drugs into the seat to hide them. He would target me in front of my friends, demanding I get out and allow him to search me all over, completely illegal. He searched my car seat 7 times and laughed and made fun of my parents for having only one working car. All before the basic procedure of asking me for my license registration. After 20 minutes of grasping for straws to find something wrong and failing, Officer Kenneth Baker made me drop off my friends and follow me home to speak with my father. And you're more interested in that timer than you are in hearing what I'm saying. You're thinking disgusting. He started telling him that I probably had illegal things in the car after he had already confirmed this wasn't the case 7 times. And also other random lies in a failed attempt to embarrass me in front of him. And basically, I've come to realize years later, he is a man-child, Officer Baker, who uses the power of being a police officer to satisfy his massive power trips. I am always respectful when speaking with officers. However, upon hearing Officer Baker's tone of voice for the first time he made contact with me, I was so in fear of having been assaulted that I made sure I was extra compliant with every demand, no hesitation, no matter what. And in closing, he's an overall terrible human being and should be realistically be in jail after looking at the record. But I guess corruption is corruption. Then he ends with, also, just because it's funny, Mr. Baker, if you are reading this comment, you are a fat loser, ha, ha, ha. That's a quote from this gentleman. Sincerely, a deeply concerned resident of this beautiful, our beautiful village. So do the right thing. Finally, you have all this information. Keep this safety and security of the residents here, the business owners and the visitors secure. Get rid of this predator, this criminal. And you know the facts. So will you go on the record now and fire Kenneth Baker?
Time is up. Thank you very much.
Will you go on the record now and fire Kenneth Baker?
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Coward?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You are kind of a coward, not gonna lie. These are really serious accusations against the police officer and you just don't care.
No, you don't touch me. He just put his hands on me. Second time.